Hello everyone and welcome to Outriders New Horizon. In today's video I'm going to share with you the updated Anomaly Power Pyromancer build focusing on the Phaser Beam and to burn the enemies, so for those that love this skill, this is definitely the build for you. In case you enjoy the content of the channel and you don't want to miss any upcoming videos are released throughout the week, feel free to subscribe. And so without any further delay, let's just jump right into it. Let's begin with our skills. We have of course the Heatwave and the Phaser Beam because we're using the legendary Acari set to boost our Anomaly power as much as I can and thus the damage for the Phaser Beam and the burn. We're also using volcanic rounds in comparison to our last builds or more traditional builds for the Thermal Bomb and Overheat. Because of the reload boost, with a minimum investment of 1 tier 1 mod, we increase our anomaly damage exponentially to all enemies in comparison with a thermal bomb that you will deal 80% more damage to elites and bosses, however you do 50% damage to everything and everyone thanks to reload boost. That's why I do believe this is one of the strongest and top tier builds you can use for solo or even when you run with the groups. Moving on to the armor and mods, of course we're using 3 pieces of the Acari set, the head, the chest and the legs. All 3 pieces have anomaly power, cooldown reduction 2 out of 3, unfortunately, but 2 of them have skill life leech and 1 has status power. We're using 2 epic pieces with anomaly power cooldown reduction and you have to go with status power because this affects both our burn and the damage for the Phaser Beam. I'm not going to delve in depth in the mods, I have to go with damage absorber because this build actually has the biggest downside, it's its upside, it deals too much damage. Why this is good and bad? Good it's because you kill the enemies very fast, and bad because our survivability depends on the burn. But because we're doing so much burn to the enemies, they remain alive only some seconds and thus we can lose the downtime for burning the enemies and sometimes you can die without having some armor and protection. That's why I found it more consistent to have the damage absorber even if you invest or not in defenses for the talents. You can see all the armor pieces and the mods in the background, and although I don't have so many flex slots, I do love Ashen Champion for example because it further boosts an anomaly power and it flick Ash to enemies, especially heavy health enemies or bosses and elites for a little more crowd control. So I love all my choices. In case you don't have a problem surviving yourself, you can replace damage absorber with bullet kindling. However, I don't recommend it. Moving on to the weapons. You don't actually have to go with these weapons because we don't have the time to proc the mods, however we need something to have status power, skill life leech to maximize our damage and survivability. The Damascus offering meets that criteria and it also has one of the best AOE and single target DPS mods, Claymore Torrent, and we also use the Shadow Comment. I have tried this with a Fortress and because our cooldowns are very low, I don't recommend it because you will lose quite a time and it's not worth it. You deal so much damage and you have very decent survivability, so Fortress is not recommended for this build. Secondary weapon, you could go with a guillotine or the animal shotgun to have that little extra DPS for single target or AOE, although it's not necessary, but it will help quite a bit. For the sidearm, I don't really use it in my rotation, so I don't have any recommendation. I focus mainly on the primary weapon to proc the mods a couple of times and the secondary weapon mods when I have the chance. Moving on to the talents, we focus on the Firestorm tree to maximize the cooldowns and the burn damage of our skills. I don't take Anomalous Lava because it's kind of an overkill with the damage absorber and without it I died only once because I wasn't paying attention and I didn't apply burn to the enemies. That's the only situation you may die. But in case you find yourself die, you can replace for example the Archmages for Anomalous Lava and you will be so tanky that you won't have any problem. Extinction is a must in my opinion. Dealing 20% extra damage to enemies below 30% health will help you deal with the elites and the bosses quite easier, and because burn is your second DPS skill, it will take so much benefit by extinction that it will make a huge difference. And we also go for the meltdown to further increase the DPS for our burn. The rotation is pretty straightforward. We start with volcanic rounds and you don't need to apply burn to enemies, we just use it most of the times for reload boost, although there are some exceptions I will mention later. I do prefer to switch to my sidearm so I won't proc my secondary weapon mods, switch to my primary weapon, apply burn to the enemies with a heat wave and debuff them, try to hit the elites because you apply the 25% extra damage debuff thanks to our mods, and try to hit as many enemies as you can, especially high health enemies, elites and bosses with a Phaser Beam, and rinse and repeat. The cooldowns of our skills are so good, they are 5.5 to 5.3 seconds, so you basically spam your skills and you don't have to worry about the reload boost because it has a 15 seconds duration and our volcanic rounds have an 11.6 seconds cooldown. That means when the volcanic rounds are up, you can pop them and you don't have to proc reload boost in case you can prioritize using Heatwave and Phaser Beam. Then after you use both of those skills, you can just reproc reload boost once again. There aren't many tips I can give you about the build, just make sure some enemies are burning, this way you will never die. And about the Phaser Beam, its biggest downside, it's also its biggest upside. During the charge of the Phaser Beam you cannot move a lot, you can just aim a little bit, but during that period you are also immune to knockback, so not even behemoths, elites or bosses cannot phase you. You can use it to your advantage, take a very sweet position even close to bosses or behemoths, charge the Phaser Beam and no one will be able to interrupt your cast and you will be able to decimate hordes of enemies in a straight line. And that was it for today's video. Thank you very much if you stick around until the end, and I really hope this will help you build your own variation of the Phaser Beam burn build. In case you love the skill, this is definitely a highly recommended build, high end, very good timer, single target DPS, AOE survivability, very good to run solo or with a group. I may do an in-depth analysis video to delve a little deeper with what other things I tried, why these things are the best combinations in my opinion, in case it is requested by the viewers or in case I found it necessary in the future. And until then, stay tuned for more upcoming videos for Outriders New Horizon and other video games. And as always, I wish you all a wonderful day.
There's no choice but take orders.